Rolling assignments. Okay, we'll call the meeting in order. The Newman City Council and Newman Redevelopment Agency of October 11, 2005. Please stand for the pledge and remain standing for the invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bow our heads. Thank you for allowing us to meet this evening, and please help us make the right decisions for the citizens of Newman. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Parker.
Present.
Marquez.
Present.
Present.
Mayor Panazea.
Present. Declarations of conflicts of interest. Do we have any this evening? Ceremonial matters. There was none. Items from the public, non-agenda items. If anybody has anything that they'd like to bring before us that is not on the posted agenda, now would be the time. I believe our supervisor, Mr. DeMartini, would like to give us a little report this evening, some county activities. Welcome.
It's always good to be here. Thank you, Mayor Panazea, the council members, citizens of Newman, Jim DeMartini, County Supervisor for the West Side. I wanted to give you just a brief update on the proposal by the Air Force to use the Crow's Landing, what used to be the Crow's Landing Naval Air Base. We still call it that, even though the Navy's out of there. They did come about 2 weeks ago, 14 of them, which surprised me. I'd only heard about the meeting the day before. When I asked what it was for, they said it was something about the air base. So I went to the meeting with their chairman, Grover. There was 14 from the Air Force there, and they gave us a presentation where they were interested in using the air base for 20 to 25 years on a lease for training for C-17 cargo planes. And these are large planes, very big ones. They're big enough that you could put helicopters and tanks inside of them. This was for pilot training only. They were not going to keep any aircraft there. They were flying them out of Travis, and they weren't even going to keep any fuel on the air base. They were just going to use it takeoffs and landings. That's primarily all they were interested in. They evaluated 16 bases nationwide, and at the time they came to see us, they said that the Crow's Landing base was their first choice. They had narrowed the choice down to 3. Travis was one, and one in Southern California, and then this one in Crow's Landing. They offered, they said if they, in preliminary discussions we had with them, they were proposing to spend up to $37 million renovating the base and the runways. They were just going to use one of the 2 runways, and they would have to reinforce the runway quite a bit because of the weight of the plane. The runways were never designed to handle a 500,000-pound aircraft, and that's 500,000 pounds empty. So these are large planes. So there was considerable runway improvements. There was a renovation of the tower, rebuilding the sewer system and the water system, installing a perimeter fence. And also what was interest to me was they proposed, they said they would put in a new fire station there with 4 to 5 trucks and employ what they thought would be about 37 firefighters, all at their expense. And that's what they needed when they were running these big planes in and out. In case there was an accident with one of them, they needed sufficient fire support there. So it was an interesting proposal. They were supposed to come with me tonight and also to do a town hall meeting, but they decided to hold off for a while. The offer is still on the table. And though I don't have any specifics at the time, but since it did involve the West Side, I wanted to tell you, what we knew about it and where the project is at this time. We expect to talk to them some more of this within the next few weeks, and when we get a little bit closer, we're still a ways away. This was just very preliminary, but I didn't want to keep you in the dark about this. Then probably the next time, if there's more of a solid proposal on the table, I will bring somebody from the Air Force with me, and they will present a better PowerPoint presentation. But just summarizing it, we did get an inquiry from the Air Force to takeoff and landings for C-17 cargo planes for a period of 20 to 25 years. That was the basic proposal, and then all the expense of renovating that base would be on them, plus there would be some rental fee that the county would get too. The important thing that I do want to stress is that when we talked to them, we made it very clear to them that our primary objective was developing that into a business park. In any use by the Air Force couldn't interfere with that business park, because that was what we wanted in the long run. And they indicated that they didn't see any reason why it wouldn't be a compatible use. About the only restrictions would be, height of buildings at the end of the runway, which says you can't put anything there anyway. But the larger the plane, the farther out you got to go from before you can put any buildings. And so I don't see that as a problem. They're very much aware of what we intend to do with the property eventually, and this might be a compatible use. It certainly would, the $37 million certainly caught our interest, since that's money that the county really doesn't have to put into that thing. Although normally you wouldn't have to reinforce a runway for most aircraft, anything near what they're going to have to do for those large aircraft. So that's a summary of where we're at. We're still talking to them, still on the table. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to attempt to answer them.
Jim, I've got a question. You're talking about C-17s. Are any other type of aircraft involved in the conversations? 20, 25 years, that'll probably be an obsolete airplane. So are they looking at their discretion to fly anything in there that they want to?
The only thing they talked about was a C-17, which they said was a fairly new plane. I think it replaces a C-5 cargo plane. I don't know much about military aircraft, but these planes aren't new. I would hope that for what they... I hate to think what one of these things costs. I've got some pictures of them. They're enormous in size. I would hope that they would last 25 years.
Well, are they going to keep it just to that aircraft, or are they going to be flying jets in and out of there, or anything else? Or just
the only thing that they were interested in was training their pilots with this large cargo plane. That was the only thing that they wanted it for, and they had no intention of even basing planes there. And because I asked them specifically that, and also whether or not that they planned on refueling the planes there, because all the fuel tanks had been dug up. And they said that they were flying out of Travis, is what they planned on doing, and then practicing landings. Some of the landings would be at night too. It would be a day and night operation. They also told me that the aircraft held, and then it was, I just couldn't believe this, but it holds 70,000 gallons of fuel, so one of those things old. So obviously they don't need to refuel it from Travis from bags. And I can't imagine a fuel tank that big, but that's what they hold. They can run, they can fly for 11 hours non-stop. But C-17 was the only thing they talked about, and it's pilot training, no basing, no aircraft here at all. Anything else?
Yeah, Jim. I'm really concerned about this, and I don't think it's compatible with what we envisioned for what was going to occur at this particular plant as far as the cruise landing airbase. We had envisioned job creations in the area, and I think all we're doing is by having the Air Force come in is adding to pollution and not really helping our environment at all. I see no benefit for them to even come here. And I don't look at seeing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, planes touch and go at that base. I just don't think it's something that the West Side wants, and I don't think the people want it on the West Side. And I think that the officials of the county should really think hard on this one, because I don't think it's compatible with the West Side. I don't think we want it, and that's my feelings, and I feel very strongly on it.
Okay, and I have not received very many negative comments about it. Now, there is no actual proposal on the table yet, for Um, just that they have the money to renovate this thing, then we don't, and it is, it's something that we're gonna consider. I don't know how compatible it's gonna be with the business park or not, whether or not they'll go through with it or select this, or whether we can come to an agreement. But I wanted to make you aware that they have been here,
Yeah.
and they have thrown this out.
Well, you know, my feelings are that they're going to try to control whatever goes on there. So once they get permission to land their aircraft there, whatever you want to do in the future is probably not going to be in your control. So it's a real concern that we allow them to use that base for that purpose.
Okay, well, you know, we'll be talking to them, so, you know, I don't know what to tell you, but certainly if it doesn't look like a good deal for us, we're not gonna do it. I would say, though, that sooner or later, at some point, we're going to use those runways for aircraft of some sort, whether it is, you know, cargo planes or, perhaps California Department of Forestry has been out and actually looked at the runways, considering possibly moving their aircraft out of Hollister and basing them there. Whether the military comes or not, we don't know, but it is important to know that sooner or later we're going to be flying planes out of there. Whose planes they're going to be, we don't know, but certainly your objection is noted. There has been absolutely no decision made at all, except that we will continue to talk. We haven't talked to them for 2 weeks. But I do note your opposition.
I guess maybe just following up on Bob's objection in terms of where the county is with that as federal property. Are you actually bound, or it's no longer military? So
No,
in this sense, they're looking to reassert the possibilities of going back to using it for military purposes. But in actuality, because of the land release, there's no binding effort there.
No, they have no right to use that base at all. The base belongs to Stanislaus County. It was actually given to us from the federal government. The Navy built it and operated it, was not interested in operating it anymore. Nassau used it for a while, still under the Navy control, until they did not want to use the base anymore. At that time, the Air Force, had they wanted it, probably could have just received it from the Navy.
Right.
And they would have just turned it over to them. But they apparently were not thinking of that, or weren't talking to each other. I'm getting my understanding how government works, and it's not, you know, sometimes real efficient. So it's probably my opinion that the Navy and the Air Force don't talk to each other. And so with no use in sight, the Navy wanted to get rid of it. They gave it to the county. The Air Force has no right to use the base. They would have to negotiate with us. It would have to be something that we wanted to do, something that would make sense for the area. But we're not bound in any way or obligated in any fashion to allow the Air Force to use that runway.
Well, I think long and hard on it, Jim, because I just think that really doesn't help the west side, and I think what's really important is what the people want on the west side. And I don't think the people on the west side want a touch-and-go landing to take care 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I think they're thinking more in terms of job opportunities in that area, and that's what we envision. And I hope the county considers that whatever you do there will affect the lives of the people on the west side.
Oh, I'm well aware of that. That's why we wanted to put all the cards on the table. We expected to have them here tonight, but they did not want to come. They said they weren't prepared. No, I don't want to do what happened with the landfill and have the deal already made and then inform you later what's happening. That's why I'm here tonight, because that's the city-county relations are a lot different than they used to be. We're a long ways to go, but I just wanted to let you know that this has occurred, and they have contacted us. I would think that we would be... We don't even have another date for a meeting set, but They have approached us, and I wanted to let you know that.
We appreciate the heads up, and Supervisor, as always, you're welcome, and keep us informed. If you hear something, let us know.
When I hear from them again, I'll be back.
Thank you very much.
One thing I can assure you is we're not going to make the deal and then inform you of it later with a press release. If we had any kind of real proposal, we would have a series of meetings and town hall meetings and get input and see if this made sense for it. We're a ways from that. And say what we really want is to make an industrial park. That's primary objective. If this fits in, if it works for us, fine. If it doesn't, it will be industrial park. But there will be planes flying in down there someday. Don't know who's they're going to be yet.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other non-agenda items? Seeing none, agenda items and item comes before us, and you'd like to speak, please come to the podium, state your name and address, and please try to keep your comments to under 3 minutes. Public hearings, we have one tonight. Item 8, conduct public hearing and introduce ordinance number 2005 next number, an ordinance amending the general zoning ordinance and accompanying zoning maps of the city of Newman. Being ordinance number 97-17 by rezoning a portion of the city of Newman known as Sherman Ranch.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. Tonight before the meeting, what I did hand out to you was an ordinance revision. There was just some typographical stuff that had been left out. There had been so many cut and paste that one of the sections had cut out, so there's about 2 sentences in there that were added, basically just describing what the description of your action would be tonight if you proceed forward. With that being said, this project was originally initiated back in 1999 when a specific plan was brought before the city. And subsequently, in May of 2000, the city did annex a project known as Sherman Ranch. Within that 114 acres, the project has set aside 3 different product types: a low-density residential, a medium-density residential, and a high-density residential. Those are generally characterized by the number of units per acre or the density of that particular part. Currently, you'll see that there's construction work being done out there right now, and that is being done to accommodate both the low density and the medium density. What is remaining on basically north and east of the park site that you see under development is a 10.23 acre project site. And what we're going to do tonight is present you with that 10-acre project site. At the September 15th meeting, the Planning Commission reviewed this zone change and reviewed the vesting tentative track map that comes along with this project. They approved the vesting tentative track map, which is number 0501, which subdivides the property into 123 single-family lots, and then there's 5 common lots, which make up the roads and the paseos and the landscape area. Now, those lots will be retained under the ownership of a homeowners association who will be responsible for maintaining all those landscaped areas and be responsible for maintenance of the roads. So what you're seeing before you tonight as part of this project and in the PowerPoint presentation will be private roads. In that vesting tentative track map, what we did is we included easements on there. The homeowners association will be responsible for maintaining the storm drainage lines and the sewer lines. But basically, due to public health and safety concerns, the city will maintain ownership of the water lines and fire hydrant lines as well. In this project, and as we show you the pictures, there's a variety of lot sizes, and what we're looking at doing tonight, or what is presented before you tonight, is a small lot, single-family residential area. I guess the best term to characterize this project would be patio homes. Essentially, that's what you're getting in a backyard. You're getting a landscaped patio out there, and we'll go into more description in that a little bit further. The house sizes will range from 973 square feet to over 1,600 square feet. And the development will contain both single-story and 2-story residences. During the annexation and the pre-zone process, the project was originally zoned R3. Now, in the R3 zone district, the minimum lot size is 6,000 square feet. And typically what's characterized in an R3 zone district is probably larger lots, triplexes, fourplexes, multifamily type setting. What the project applicant is looking to you for is going to PD once again to get the smaller lot sizes, to get the density up. The density for this project is 12 units to the acre. And as you characterize projects, and one way to provide an affordable housing product would be to increase your density because your land prices are fixed and your house prices are fixed. So to get more units per the acre is how they're proposing to get a more affordable product on there. It should be noted that the single-family residences are also permitted within the general plan designation and permitted within the R3 zone district. Again, it's the lot size is why we're going to the PD on that. There's also the standard lot or setback are 5 foot on the side, and those are going to be reduced to 3.5 foot on the side. And again, we'll walk you through that and what considerations have taken place in the design of this project to compensate for those smaller setback areas. So it's not feeling like everybody's on top of each other and you're not looking through somebody's window. So also included in your package were the layout of the project site with a project description that kind of walks you through the design details over there, the orientation, the paseos, and those types of products. There's also a market feasibility report in there so that you can see if there was truly a market for that. Again, what the target rate is the lower end of market rate housing on this one here. So with that, we're asking you to introduce the ordinance, conduct a public hearing first, introduce the ordinance second, if you so desire, and then we'll have a second reading and publish this in the newspaper subsequently. This project was also included in our Sherman Ranch Development Agreement that was approved several months ago, so all the supplemental fees are applicable to this project and are going to be collected. The supplemental fees deal with the sewer, the general plan, and the downtown plaza, where the 3 projects are in there. Also, there were concerns by the Planning Commission dealing with the wastewater treatment plant, and because of the development agreement, because of the specific plan and how this project was originally approved in the year 2000, we have always calculated these units in as part of that calculation to see where we stood in terms of capacity. Overall, this project, the entire Sherman Ranch project, comes in under the number of units that were originally proposed. Originally, there's 377 single family, and then this 144 in the multifamily or this high density area. Currently, I think there's 317 in the single family, and then 123 in this particular area here. So with that, what the applicant is trying to accomplish tonight is to try to provide some workforce housing for the community, also to provide a single family residential character living arrangement, so for people who don't desire a standard yard size and don't want to maintain that. It is anticipated that this product will probably be at the lower end of the market rate housing, and I think the developer will talk to you a little bit more about that. So just the last thing we talked about was the need for a homeowners association. That is already going through the Department of Real Estate. They're already developing all that. That is a part of the approval process. There will be common areas that need to be tamed by the homeowners association. The developer is responsible for setting that up prior to selling any of the units. So with that, I can take any of your questions right now. There will be a full PowerPoint presentation walking you through much more detail than I have explained today.
Questions, or right now you want to go through the PowerPoint first, or?
Let me ask a question while it's fresh in my mind. You talked about the sewer. The original map, the number of hookups is actually decreasing, even considering going from 60 homes or 60 residences to 120 in this project.
No, this project was originally slated for 144, and it's gone down to 123.
How many how many lots in a medium density acre?
Well, this is the high-density area that calls for a minimum of 12 units to the acre.
It always was that way?
Yes, that's the way it
So
was
it
approved.
hasn't been changed then?
Yes, that's correct. The low density and the medium density are already being developed in the project site. This is their high-density piece that was in there.
I guess for a clarification, the style of high density is what's being asked for in a TD change.
That's correct. Instead of,
That's the way I understood it.
yes, that's,
So in
that's
the
a
style
more,
of housing, instead of having perhaps condos stacked on top of one another to get that density, you're seeing a different flavor of it with single family, but with different elevations, and they're going to be a little tighter. That's what I kind of understood.
that's an excellent way of characterizing it.
If those are no further questions at this time, then we'll move on to our PowerPoint.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, Mr. Hallinan, staff, and citizens. It's a pleasure to be back here. It's been a real long haul for us to travel all the way from Highway 33 intersection and finally be, working on Hills Ferry Road. This project is a project that I have a lot of personal responsibility with the company. I brought this type of a program to SCM to meet a demand for housing that just isn't being satisfied. I went to a Myers report the morning of the Planning Commission hearing, and they reported that now from the Sacramento border to Fresno, you cannot find a single-family home for under $300,000 in the market, basically. And personally, my sister is a nurse, and she had to move to Texas to get a starter home and get going with a family. We see a lot of people who leave our sales offices, probably 8 out of 10, who can no longer meet the threshold of our typical single-family home, which is the typical 4 or 5 units to the acre. So when I worked as a professional planner, I did density housing for about 8 years, medium density to high in this 10, 12, 14 DU range, dwelling units per acre range. And we made a lot of mistakes in the evolution of that. We did, the courtyard homes without aprons, and they didn't function well for the aspect of the cars. We did alleys, which ran into a lot of difficulty with single women, people who didn't want to, at night, park a car and transgress to the house. We tried many things, and in my search for this product, I discovered the product that Bloodgood Sharp Buster has actually trademarked, and it's called the pull-apart concept. And Stephen Bollier is going to get into the real nuts and bolts of the presentation and show you the product, as they are the author of this and actually have patented the process. But basically what the concept is they took an attached project, a 5-plex, and they opened it up until it was legal to code, where we didn't have to face, the basic wrap insurance policy. We've just requalified and we're doing some attached project, and the wrap insurance policy, which wraps the whole project, takes care of all the subs so anybody can walk on that job, costs us over $18,000 a unit. And when you pull them apart to the minimum of 3.5 foot each side yard, which gives you the fire code rating, distance, and so forth, the insurance drops to $3,200 a unit. And everything has to be done right in a project that's trying to hit a market from the low 200,000s to the 300,000s. And that's the sub-market rate that we want to be in. When we bought Sherman Ranch, we had the ability to pretty much through the development agreement replan it. In Hearthstone Ranch, all the lots are the same size, and the only way we could control market was to segment the builders, where we made agreements to not overlap too much in the square footage, but on 7,500 square foot lots and 6,000 square foot lots, it's hard to really get the range. We have 5 product types in Sherman Ranch starting with a 963 square foot program up to some of the larger lots could see 4,000 square foot homes. So we're much happier with that mix in Sherman Ranch, and we've done a lot of other planning things with narrower streets, tree-lined streets and so forth, and we have some really nice features in this project. So I'd like to just orient you to the project, kind of talk about some of the important things in parking in the HOA, and then I'll turn it over to Stephen, who will take you through the product. And we actually have some real nice visuals. We have a 3D fly-through that kind of takes you through, so you can understand this pull-apart and what it will look like. So I'll start with the PowerPoint. I think I need to get out of your way so you can see this. Uh-oh, we had a little problems with the setup here. All right. I apologize for us starting a little late, but we. Okay, this is the 10-acre. All right. How's that? Okay, this is the 10-acre, 10.23 acre project, Hills Ferry Road. This is the future Sherman Parkway. This is what's called Edinburgh Way, and this is the future park that strategically it makes a lot of sense to be just right across the street from a project of this density. One of the things by design in the circulation aspect of this project, it is a grid. This is designed to be infill and go into any city as well as be out on an edge. But in the pull-apart concept, this puts the car and the use of the street back into the play, which has been pretty much the biggest problem in solving the parking aspect of projects of this density. This is the famous Newman Drainage District easement that we did a lot of work with through the substantial compliance. We have full approval of this avoidance measure from the state architect, Charles Davis. We've done all our work now with the lines, and we're covering everything up. But this now turns into a trail, a 30-foot wide meandering trail that comes right to the park and eventually to downtown, and then through the Sherman Parkway to the east, goes all the way to the other project in the school. So everyone can get through here and have access to the park, and we specifically brought this back to keep the end of the trail from being out on Hills Ferry Road. The project is not gated. It's not hidden behind masonry walls. It's got very unique four-sided elevations, and we feel it'll be a very nice jewel as you enter and see this, and a good neighbor, to the park. Let me go to the next. This is basically the pull apart. This shows this is the roof scene, and this is the actual architecture, how it sits. And you can really see it's a puzzle of homes that have been pulled apart. It has the 963 square foot has been strategically placed on the corners, both corners of the project, so when you go down the block, the pyramid effect has a nice scale to it. All of the patios are fairly large, 16 by 24s. They've all been thought about with all of the second-story windows and privacy, because living at this density, you need to have your private space. There are view vistas, but the important thing is all of these people have access to and can use the paseos, which run all the way to the park as well. So kids can be out, throwing a baseball in the close proximity to people in the homes so they can hear them. We're finding in our projects where we're putting these now that people like to have some local play areas, and they're a little more worried about their kids being down at the park, especially if they're really young. This shows how the project, parks cars. And it basically, has the garages, the full aprons, and the ability to use the streets. It parks cars at a ratio of 4.4 cars per unit. And when we did all of our research with DRE and talked to our consultants who are formulating all of our budgets, they manage an awful lot of projects and see a lot of projects. And we did the research, and typically at the densities, at this kind of a density, from 8 units to 12, the typical parking allotment is 2.2 cars per unit. So we feel we've doubled that. Our homeowners association is set up to actually register the number of cars that are allowed to be in each unit. And it has provisions that cars that are parked in the wrong places in the wrong amount of times can be removed from the site since they're all private streets. This is the kind of detail we have to submit to to DRE and the people who look at our homeowners associations, where we have to quantify every square inch of what's public property to be maintained, private property. This is a complete fencing detail. But one of the things in living at these densities, and we will landscape all of the yards and maintain them through the association on the outside. We will landscape the back patios in the beginning, and then they'll maintain them themselves. But we've thought about all of the garbage can locations, and they're all screened. We've thought about, where all the air conditioning units are. We've thought about where all the gas meters are, and we've thought about any travel patterns, safety visuals in case of fire, and that's all been reviewed. So tremendous amount of additional detail goes into a project at this scale. Now, we are the first people in California bringing this project out of the ground, and we're taking some risks there, but it's the best we've seen. We believe in it, and we really want to be able to provide housing, under that $300,000 mark. So I will turn this over to Stephen to take you through the rest of the detail, unless you have, some immediate questions fresh on your mind.
I had a question.
Sure.
In regards to the openness that you said is great. I don't think that openness is so great. I think that if you look what you did just west of there, Hearthstone, you have a complete wall that goes around that whole area. Now, to me, it's in contradiction as far as what you're saying, because why would you put a wall completely around a project like that and leave this one so open? And when you talk about Hills Ferry, there's going to be a tremendous amount of traffic coming down Hills Ferry. And my concern is that if that's open and there's no sound wall, there's nothing to prevent sound, there's going to be some real problems. Hills Ferry is going to be heavily traveled in the next 5 to 10 years.
Well, this does have the Sherman Wall continues here.
That's down Hills Ferry?
That's on Hills Ferry. That'll be the same. It's Sherman Parkway, I'm sorry.
It doesn't come down Hills Ferry.
It doesn't come down Hills Ferry, but we are providing, I believe it's 120 feet back, full architectural treatments in the homes to reduce the sound to the level that's required in the general plan. And we talked about that a lot. Should there be a wall? Should there not be a wall? And we just feel that having the openness and have the feel of that paseo was the best way to go, and that you're looking at architecture.
I'm just concerned what's going to go along that area as far as the homes and the cars and how they're going to be parked and the exposure.
Well, there's no driveways at all. It's basically a fence, a wrought iron fence and landscaping. And you have the distance, it's about basically the paseo and the distance of the right-of-way puts these houses, about 50 feet back. So they're not, right up to Hills Ferry, and there is separation there.
Michael, I've got a question for you. With this kind of density, one of the things that we're talking about right now and looking at is, for a better choice of terms, let's call it noise pollution coming from your neighbor or neighborhood. Is that addressed in your homeowners association?
You know, I've never, you know, been asked that question, but that is certainly a standard. We have a draft in front of the city, and we can address those kind of issues. We have experience with projects that we have built and have homeowners associations, and they perform really well. Especially, you know, these are real homes for people. These are people who are going to be getting out of an apartment and have their first chance of, you know, starting a family and having some equity. And we think we'll see they'll really take care of them and you know, want this place to look great. And noise is included in our...
I have a question. You're talking about housing prices of $200,000 to $300,000, but at the same time you're talking about a homeowners association. What's it going to cost this homeowner to belong to this homeowners association per year?
The preliminary budgets that we received are going to be about $112 a month.
In other words, you're talking about another $1,500 a year to belong to the homeowners.
Correct. And we know we can't, on projects that we've built, we can't exceed $125 and qualify the people. So we watch that really carefully. That's why most of the materials have really been looked at. All the materials on the sides of the units is going to be that recycled rubber material. You know, we've looked at everything about maintenance the best that we can.
Okay, that brings me to another question. Homeowners association. I've read some stories about people who lost their houses because they missed one payment to their homeowners association. Have they covered that in...
Yeah, in fact, I personally lived in one and got out of it, but they just passed a law that it was just passed that you can't do that anymore.
Michael, any disputes with the homeowners association are resolved by the group in the homeowners association?
Correct. They have a board of, you know, association, and they have meetings, and they have bylaws, and they elect officials.
Our daughter has a first business association in the gated community, and every year the association people sign up, and it's getting to the point where it's getting...
Well, it hasn't gone up as much as the prices of houses, so we just want to give these people a chance.
Normal homeowners association. I mean, what are they responsible for? The homeowners association, other than maybe mowing lawns or something.
Well, it's the maintenance of the streets, the landscaping, you know, the exterior landscaping. They will maintain the storm drain system and the sewer system. Here's Stephen to kind of take you through the product.
Good evening. Again, I'm Stephen Ballier with Luggage Chartbuster Architects and Planners, and thank you for the opportunity to present this to you this evening. As Michael basically did an awesome job of explaining the process in that the pull-apart concept where we literally took a density that is consistent with a condo or townhome type project, or apartments for that matter, similar square footages, but pulled them apart and have these units detached, thus allowing single-family detached home ownership, hopefully enabling first-time buyers to achieve that American dream of actually owning a home. What this graphic shows, you saw kind of the site graphic of the pull-aparts themselves and how they relate. This is a small graphic, and the highlighted image is showing the actual unit itself. This floor plan, I'll just quickly go through these just to show kind of the orientation. As Michael had pointed out, the single story is on the corner. He also had mentioned about a six-pack type cluster type project and inherent issues with that. And what that was a series of units that were oriented around, if you will, alleyway or a street. And what we've done here is actually oriented the units to face out. In this case, it would be towards the street. In this case, it would be to a paseo and to open space. And the company I'm with has been in business for about 40 years. We started in Des Moines, Iowa, and we've got multiple offices throughout the United States. We believe we're very successful because of our innovation and innovative designs. And some things that are inherent in our designs is when you walk into the home, having an open feel, whether it's a 973 square feet house or a 6,000 square foot house, having the entry orient to your public space, and having the entry also orient to any outdoor living space or through views, if you will. This would be the patio space, and not only does the great room face onto that outdoor space, but so does the master bedroom. This unit is a one-story. It is a two-bedroom. The vision from a marketing standpoint of this plan would be the first-time buyer or the empty nester, young professionals who are looking for their first home and treating this as a dinner office space perhaps. Next slide, please. This is characteristic of the three different elevation styles, and we were inspired by the city founding, in the late 1800s. A lot of the styles that you find as you're traveling through the city, the small quaint cottages, is a national style, a style that's been developed across the United States, predominantly siding, predominantly have gable elements facing forward, and reminiscent of the American farmhouse that you see very quite often in the Central Valley especially. The craftsman that over the years developed the arts and crafts style, we've got shingle element in the gable end. These are a combination of stucco and siding and have elements of planter boxes and shutters and things like that to enhance the detail. And the French cottage, reminiscent of post-World War II, some of the communities that developed over the years. And you'll notice sculptural stucco elements and stone. We try to focus the stone at the front entry to really draw your attention to that front entry and put the stone where you can touch it, feel it, experience it, make it special. This is... Oh, sorry. Yes, those elements, the elements that are depicted are in fact all standard elements, inherent part of the elevation. The other thing is you'll notice at the site plan when we went through it, these interesting shapes, and those are, as Michael put, kind of the puzzle pieces, if you will. And what is inherent in that design is to start developing some interest of architecture, some four-sided architecture, and interest of massing and detailing. And again, this plan, I'm not going to spend too much time on it, does have a two-car garage, has a main entry point. On the main level, you've got your kitchen, your family, a powder bath. As you proceed upstairs, all your secondary bedrooms and your master is upstairs. And as Michael pointed out, much thought was put into how these units develop and what the orientation is as far as looking out into the open space and also taking advantage of views to whether it's the outdoor open space or the paseo. And subsequently as well, upstairs having window orientation in a way that the master, for example, looking across or through, across to the paseo or across to its own public space. You'll notice also in the original graphic, this line here, there's 5 units and they're mirrored at this point. What happens at that point is the project, like I said, is mirrored. However, it's designed in a way that the windows on this side would be able to be shifted. So even though the unit may be identical on this side, the windows themselves do not look into your neighbor's residence. The other thing much care has been taken in orienting the windows in such a way that when you're in your outdoor patio space, it is facing a blank wall which creates a backdrop, if you will, landscaping opportunity, so you're not, again, looking into a window. Next slide, please. Again, the architectural style, the three different styles depicted here. This is this unit here. Again, this would be one where the garage faces the alleyway or street, and the front entry, this portion, faces the paseo. So it gives an opportunity to, kind of create an interesting approach to your front door, having opportunity to walk through more of a park-like setting. Next image, please. Again, the three different styles depicted. And this unit, again, is a little bit different configuration. One of two units that have a two-car forward-facing garage. Again, as Michael stated with his graphic showing that the garage is pulled back, allowing not only diminishment of the garage itself, but also guest parking in the driveway. Again, this is depicted with the Craftsman style. Next image, please. And the three different styles. Next image. And once again, another two-car standard-facing garage. This unit depicts a garage facing this direction and the entry facing the paseo, again taking full advantage of, again, that paseo in the park-like setting. You'll also notice, again, I'll just briefly touch upon the floor plan, the public spaces on the lower level, and again, the secondaries and the master upstairs. This unit is has a fourth bedroom, which, and given the square footage, is typically quite unheard of. And again, built within the floor plans, there are a lot of flexibilities with regard to loft options and things like that as well. Next image, please. And again, the architectural elevations. These depict all of the front elevations simultaneously, just so you can kind of get what the units look like in a collage form, if you will. And the detailing of things such as shutters and detailing such as shingles in the gable ends and stone and elements like that to really give these a quaint character. Next image, please. This is showing a typical block of 5 and what they would look like in a streetscape fashion, the A being from this direction looking this way, the B looking this way at these units here, and the C obviously looking in this direction. Again, kind of that original statement I made as far as turning it inside out, all three or all four, of these elevations are facing a public space, whether it's a street alleyway or the paseo itself. We depicted this in the French cottage style. Our vision is that all of this village within the village would be the same style of architecture. Subsequently, the next one over would be all the same style of architecture being depicted in perhaps a Craftsman or the national style, and the same with over here. So when you're looking from this across, you would be seeing a different style of architecture depending on where you're standing. This being depicted all in the French cottage style, you'll notice that there are similar elements as far as the styling of the roof, as far as the detailing, as far as the materials. However, each one has a unique character just inherent in its design itself. It's not this unit looks identical to this unit, looks identical to this unit. The other elements as far as stone and shutters and elements that have been added to again, create individuality are there to create an identity, if you will, for the individual units, whether it's stone, whether it's a sculptural stucco element, or different shutter types. Next image, please. This is a fly-through that kind of gives you, and it's quite fast, so I apologize for that. This is just a massing study, so forgive us for some of the crudeness of the detailing at this point in time. But again, it's just to kind of give you a better idea of the relationship of the units themselves, and kind of the size and massing. And then we'll kind of fly over so you can kind of see from a different angle if you push the next button. Again, this is depicting a little bit larger, and again, excuse the imagery, hopefully none of you get motion sickness. Didn't bring Dramamine. But this again gives you a kind of a little bit better imagery as far as how the units feel themselves. You just saw the Paseo. Again, we're kind of driving in our vehicle or walking to kind of get the massing of the units themselves. And then we're going to fly over and kind of see the Paseo running through the center of the project. Again, this is very, very, very preliminary, quite crude, and I apologize for the jerky motion, but it does in fact give you a very good opportunity to kind of experience the home three-dimensionally. And on that, we'll open it up to questions.
Questions?
One of the questions I have on parking, and I know you did a lot of calculations on the amount of parking that's available. Taking into consideration a lot of people use their garages for storage and that sort of thing, I certainly think that would change those numbers, and you're going to find more cars parking on the street.
We have covered that in the CC&Rs, and there's going to be inspections, and people are not allowed to use garages as storage facilities.
So that's enforceable.
Yes.
What about the colors of the homes and things
The
like
colors
that?
of the homes are set and will be controlled
They can't be changed.
No.
And so
We have defined palettes. Sorry, I'll get back up here.
So all those
Yeah.
things are defined to the homeowner.
Correct. And we've even, in our classics and traditions, we totally control the streetscapes now and control the colors so that, everyone sees a house they like and they want to put it next to the same house. So we've truly tried to think through this to be a good project. We've done densities of this type as attached projects, and this is a transformation for people. I grew up, I lived in apartments, wall to wall, a place to park your car, 67 stalls down. This is definitely a chance to use these densities. And for years these densities were being passed up. When we went before the Park Commission, they asked me, is this ever going to be real? Are you just going to change this to low density? And that's these design solutions have provided the ability to provide these densities to people to live in a fee simple home and get a chance to get in the market. So it's not perfect, you don't have everything, but I think it's the best on the market today, and we really believe in it. We've got a lot invested to try to get this. In fact, I went to the League of Cities with Mr. Parker and presented this to 550 officials like yourselves. And in 2 days, I was approached by 45 cities, and I'm negotiating with 15 of them right now to come to their cities and give us a chance to have this kind of a project.
I guess that's kind of like an inlet, huh? I wanted to speak to the market study just for a moment, because there was a few things that came to my attention that we spoke of considerably from this dais as a council, and that's affordable housing. You hear that a lot, and I always say affordable housing in some resort must be subsidized somehow. We've done some pretty nice projects over there on Prince Road with the senior citizen housing through self-help, and also the low-income project that we have with apartments there for through self-help. If you look at this research analysis, I'm going to go to section 1, page 6. How close are you guys going to stick with this recommended residential product line and base pricing? I see here a single-story, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, great room breakfast, $198,900. A 2-story, 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, $210,900. And on up to number 5, 239, roughly $240,000. And we already know what the median prices are going for in the Central Valley. And I think you stated from Sacramento all the way down to Fresno how expensive it is. This is something that really drew my attention, because you're seeing a product that's offering something that's different. Because surely given some of your concerns, Bob, and even some of yours, Mike, in terms of what you're looking at, we could have a square there for high density and pack in units, and they could be for sale. But you're not going to get the kind of elevation, and I really like the fact that they went and took the time to look at some of the older structures in our city. And Bob Navoy, you might want to back this up a little. We recently took a trip with the General Plan Committee. We went to Aggie Village in UC in Davis. And this is really analogous to some of the things we saw with the little college cottages. There's a shopping center that backs right up to that.
That's where we got our street sizes.
Is that right?
Correct. And we use their parking model.
It's something that when you see it, you know, outside of what you're looking at graphically, to see it in the actual community is something to behold because it enhances and it induces pedestrian walks. He talked about the Paseo a couple of times. You see how it goes along Sherman Ranch, so a jogging path. And then I think some of the concerns with the sound wall, we talked about that to a certain extent, that we might want to get away from that to a certain degree. My home backs up to Hillsbury. There's trucks that go along Hillsbury at night. I can't hear them. And I might be a little more than the 50 feet that you're speaking of. But, you know, when I think of the sound wall, and we have quite a few of them now, particularly with Sherman Ranch, they may not always be necessary because we don't have the freeway type traffic, the vehicles per. And, you know, I'm not a big proponent on selling any developer's project per se. I'm a big proponent of what I think would look aesthetically nice in the city of Newman and offer something a little different. That's the way I'm viewing this project. I'm viewing it as something that's a little different. I think you're stating this pull-apart project is something that's new, but what it offers in terms of housing, I see as a beneficial project because it's fitting within the parameters we've already set up. And I would definitely like to see something like this rather than the normal box and then a big parking lot and, you know, condos, because that's the other element of high density.
That's the only alternative.
That we would have got.
And on the Aggie Village, I did study the parking on that project for months on Saturdays and nights, and I'd look at it to see how it's lived in, and it works well.
This,
Comments? Tim, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, this was unanimously carried through our planning commission, and then also architectural review committee reviewed all of those elevations of the housing.
I still have concern about Hillsbury, and I think that openness is not good. It's not something we want because it's going to be a major artery coming into our city. And I don't want to say which parts of town, but if you go around our town and look where houses are open, where you can see them as you drive by, it doesn't look good.
These are strictly their front elevations without garages, because it's the Paseo, so you're really looking at the Paseo, and there's only, you know, 2 homes per block that have this facing the Paseo, so there's no cars, there's absolutely no garages to be open. It's really just like looking at front elevations behind a 30-foot Paseo with landscaping. And we worked with staff, with Michael, quite a bit back and forth, I think, thinking about that. But we're going to take the architectural soundproofing 2 houses back to take care of that. In other words, it's going to be the face of the house and then the windows 1 step back to have a full coverage of 120 feet back. We think we've covered it. I just hate putting good-looking architecture behind walls. And most of the reason you have the walls on these other projects is just the backyards. Every house in Sherman Ranch is a backyard, which has no landscaping. Sometimes you're looking at play sets. This is like basically looking at the nicest fronts of homes. So it's going to be a great. It's not. I know what you're saying. You're thinking, God, we're going to be looking at all these garage doors open. It's not like that at all, and that's why we wanted to have it open.
I think one of the other things, Bob, maybe not considering is I'm sure that speed limit out there will be reduced. those houses are built, so that should negate some of the noise.
Yeah, the speed limit will have to come down ahead of Sherman Ranch, especially with the park there.
Of course, then you're gonna have a four-way stop right there at Driscoll and Hillsbury too.
So that, hopefully all of that, we just really, we spend a lot to have good elevations on all sides of these houses. This isn't just like, and we've had some problems in Hearthstone where nobody trims the other windows. This is a fully defined
I think what bothers me, Mike, you're breaking new ground, and I think that your project looks great. I think you've done a lot of work, and you've given a lot of thought to everything you've done. But we just have to know that it's right.
Sure.
And so often we've made mistakes in the past, and when you make mistakes, you can't go back and correct them. You have to live with them another 40, 50 years.
Right.
So
Well, and there's no access from Hills Ferry Road, so nobody can park there and go in.
there's no access at all.
So it's just going to be landscaping where you're going to see homes behind it, but rather than the wall. It's not a cost thing for us.
Okay, well, but there would be parking along there.
No.
There's no parking at all.
No. Probably the parking you'll see there will be overflow parking from the park. But these people are totally, accessed from the interior and have no reason to park or try to get in there. So it's not going to be, it's not going to be anything unaesthetic. And we think we're handling the sound. And the speed reduction will help that tremendously.
Another area that you're breaking ground on, of course, is homeowners. And that's going to be interesting to see how that transpires, because it's something that I'm sure a lot of people that are moving into Newman are familiar with it, but it's just something else they're going to have to deal with.
Well, the other thing this Myers study pointed out is there's 1,250,000 jobs in good paying jobs in Stanislaus and San Joaquin County, and that's up 500,000 jobs in the last 2 years. And nobody's building houses for those people. The average income per family is about $65,000. They can buy these houses. They can buy these houses. And that's why these cities have contacted me to say, look, all the big national, everybody's taking care of 4 units to the acre. I mean, everybody's doing that. I've been finding these sites, they're passed over. Nobody wants to get into this. So we're giving it a shot.
How about family size? Is there restrictions as far as, let's say it's a 2-bedroom home, and someone has 4, I know, there's 4 children, 2 adults.
That's beyond our legal abilities.
Okay. I know, that's beyond our scope too.
That's why I can't go that far.
Yeah, I know, but those are things that do occur.
All right, well, thank you, and we enjoyed the presentation, and just one other update, you'll be able to be out using your new park very soon. We got all the concrete poured, 2 buildings are on the way, and that's progressing very well, so I'm glad we got a new name for it. Thanks.
Michael? Yes. Before you leave, I'd like to compliment you. I think the concept, the way you've done this is fantastic. It's a major step forward compared to apartments to the boxes. That is unbelievably beautiful. I like the idea of a homeowners association. I hope it all works. I want to congratulate you.
Well, the only thing I don't like about this project is I didn't think of it.
We don't know that.
So,
Just take credit, Mike.
Yeah. Use a free pass.
I'm not going to cut off the council at this time. I see we have a public person, so at this time I will open the public hearing and allow Mr. Novoa to...
Thank you, Bob Novoa, and also a member of the General Plan Update Committee, and I'd like to just reinforce what Councilmember Parker said regarding our tour last Tuesday. And the Aggie Village, to me, was what this will ultimately be. And so there's a project there for those of you that are not familiar with it that has grown out. How long has that been there, Mike? Is that all? The trees and everything that they've put up there are a lot older than that. They look a lot older than that. Maybe they put fruit trees, and we all know what fruit trees do. They grow very fast. So you get that feel that I thought it was like 20 years old. And we talked to a couple of residents in that area that were out picking the fruit, and I hope you guys do that. Part of what they did up there was they planted nothing but fruit trees. The residents share in the bounty of that harvest. And it's just phenomenal, and all these little walkways are depicted here. And I don't have any invested interest in this at all, and I'm excited about this. I was excited about that when I saw it, and I thought, this is what we've been hearing the people in Newman say. This is what we want. We want to get away from the things, not necessarily wholesale, but bring us another product. Bring us something else that fits, something that works. This is it. This will work. We saw it in about 4 different places on our tour. This similar type product, it works. They've built them in the last 10 years. They're not identical to this, but they're similar enough way that you can say, yeah, we see them now a few years down the road. Conversely, we went to one location that, that place will never look good. Given the amount of money, I'm not going to say where it is, given the amount of money that was spent there, I just thought it was the biggest waste of money I've ever seen in my life. That it didn't make any sense. And so that's the worst of what could happen. To me, this is like the best of what could happen. And so I would encourage you to work favorably on this action. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Navarro. I wasn't able to go on that general plan tour, but I like what I see here. As somebody that's been in Newman all my life, 46 years, I always lived right outside the city limits, and I bought a house in town 6 years ago. If I hadn't bought it at that time, I wouldn't be able to afford a house in town, the way the prices are. And that's one thing I hear from the younger people, that have grown up in this town and work in the general area, have a child or two, they can't afford a house. And I think this gives more opportunities for the younger people. And even as they said, the empty nesters, there are some people I know that have big houses that they travel a lot, they don't want to maintain them. This would be perfect for them too, the bigger units. And I like it. I like it a lot. Does anybody else from the public like to comment? Council? See no one, I will close the public hearing and ask for some direction.
Mr. Mayor, I would move, I move to waive the reading in full of this public hearing for this ordinance amendment. Okay. I just had a question on the wording. I think there's a misprint here. It had Marquez. It should be Sherman Ranch. Is that correct? Territory known as Sherman Ranch.
Was that in the original? Oh, I see it in the,
Yeah.
in the revised
There's
one.
two different places that it should be a strikeout and corrected to Sherman Ranch.
On the second, okay.
Yeah, on the second ordinance sheet.
First one is right.
First one was right, the second one is wrong with.
It's the combination of the two that's right.
You mean they're both wrong?
Well, it's just the wording of the territory, so let's strike that and make it proper when it comes out in print. And so from there, I'll move to introduce ordinance number 2005, an ordinance amending the general plan zoning ordinance and accompanying zoning map of the city of Newman, being ordinance number 97-17, by rezoning a portion of the city of Newman known as Sherman Ranch.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Moving on to consent calendar. Item A, approval of warrants. Item B, approval of minutes of the September 27th, 2005 regular meeting.
So move.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Item 10, regular business. Consider support of Planning Commission decision to uphold Planning Director's interpretation of NMC section, Newman Municipal Code section 510060I.
That's correct. Thank you, Mayor, council members. Again, at the September 15th Planning Commission meeting, there was an appeal of the Planning Director's interpretation of the Municipal Code section in front of you today. The Municipal Code section deals with the maximum building height allowed within the I-zone district. That appeal was submitted by a business called Complete Wireless Inc. At the September 15th meeting, the Planning Commission supported the Planning Director's interpretation. As part of that, and as part of the administrative remedies process, the applicant has the opportunity to appeal that decision again up to the City Council, and that's where we're at today. We'll talk a little, first let me read what the code says. And again, this is Newman Municipal Code Section 5-10-060I, which reads, maximum building height, and then again, this is in the I zone district. The maximum building height shall be 50 feet as measured from the existing grade level. Projects above 50 feet may be allowed for minor ancillary equipment, such as ventilation equipment and communications, etc. A conditional use permit is required to structures above 50 feet. The absolute height of any structure with or without a conditional use permit is 75 feet. The applicant has filed a conditional use permit that exceeded the 75-foot height, and that's kind of why we've gotten into this code section, and I've said the maximum height is 75 feet. The thing the applicant would like to do is file a variance for the height to go above 75 feet, and they've made a distinguishing point where conditional use permits and variances are two separate processes that deal with two separate things, and staff doesn't dispute that at all. Variances are to allow a deviation from standards when certain and specific situations exist or settings exist that don't allow them to meet the Muni Code standards. Conditional uses permits are for uses that are not necessarily permitted within that zone district, but can be a discretionary use at the Planning Commission level, and they evaluate that to see if it is an appropriate use at that time. So, again, when I look at state law basically says that variance shall not be granted for a parcel of property which authorizes a use or activity which is not otherwise expressly authorized by the zone regulation governing the parcel of the law. When staff looked at the fact that in the zone district it says that you can exceed 50 feet, you can go from 50 up to 75 with a conditional use permit, my interpretation means that that's a use. You're allowed to up your use to 75 feet because that's what a conditional use permit is. That's defined by law. And if you look at state law, variance cannot grant a use. So again, staff is using that. And then the second thing that staff is using in relation to conditional use permit, and we're going back to Newman Municipal Code, that says the purpose of requiring a conditional use permit is to ensure the proper integration of uses. So again, that goes back and saying the code says you can go 50 to 75 feet with a conditional use permit. That again defines it as a use. With that also being said, staff looked at the last line that says absolute height of any structure with or without a conditional use permit is 75 feet. To me, that meant that the council that was sitting on at the time that this came before them wanted to put the cap at 75 feet. That's why they say the absolute height. So you can't go above that. So I recommend to them, if they wanted to exceed 75 feet, they had to come back and do an ordinance amendment striking that wording, the absolute height of any structure with or without a conditional use permit is 75 feet. If they struck that from the ordinance, then they could then apply for a conditional use permit or a variance around that standard. So there is no fiscal impact with this particular project. And so staff is concluding by looking at those two particular sections of the Muni Code, as well as looking at state law, that the Muni Code provides for an increase in maximum building height is 50 feet. 51 to 75 requires a use permit. That's an increase in the use for the height of it, so therefore it defines it as use, so therefore they're disqualified from applying for a variance. And with the use of the term the absolute height with or without a use permit kind of prohibits them from filing a conditional use permit for increased height. So I can answer any questions. And again, staff is just looking for your support in terms of what our definition means on that. So.
Before we proceed any farther, Mr. Hallinan, our city attorney, do you agree with that assessment, Tom?
Yes, and we had this discussion at the planning commission. To kind of sum up, you can't have a use variance, so that tackles the one issue. Again, we agree they are separate. And then secondly, we think that last sentence, the absolute height of any structure with or without a conditional use permit is 75 feet, controls what you can do with a use permit on that second prong.
So with that, Mayor, I'd also like to show that the applicant is here in the audience and they would like to speak with the council at your
Absolutely.
privilege.
Michael, just before you step aside, I just wanted to, the last time I could recall a conditional use permit, F&A Dairy, they built a silo that I think was up to 75 feet. They spent $1 million, and we gave them a variance on a use that they already had, their silo, and they requested a conditional use permit to go up to the 75 feet.
That was that last big
That was that last
million-gallon
big
silo, I believe, yes.
So it gives me a lot of clarity, using that as an example, based on this ordinance, that the variance is separate from a conditional use permit. A variance would have to be on something that's already...
Generally for something, for example, we have a lot in a cul-de-sac where the setbacks are kind of different because of the way
Right.
it's shaped, and somebody
Or a
can't
tool
put
shed.
patio up.
Right. Tool shed.
Right, well, I've heard that word being used quite a bit when we talked about tool sheds and variances, so, and setbacks.
Good example.
But the idea for a variance in a similar situated people have a reason to be treated differently because of the difference in that one certain property versus all the other ones.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, Mr. Helen, and city staff. My name is Erin Merrill. I'm here on behalf of Complete Wireless Consulting, who is an agent for Verizon Wireless. Just to brief you on how we got to this point. Back in May, Complete Wireless, on behalf of Verizon Wireless, submitted a conditional use permit application, as Mr. Holland stated, for a 110-foot monopole in I district at 2006 L Street here in the city of Newman. Through discussions with staff, it was brought to our attention the language of the code. Communications between myself and Mr. Holland happened throughout July. July 28th, we submitted a variance application to the city of Newman, and this issue of interpretation was heard by the Planning Commission last month. As Mr. Holland has just stated, California law recognizes the distinction between a conditional use permit and a variance. Their argument is that the state law section 65906 language does not authorize variance in terms of a use on a property, and they see that this 50 to 75 foot height increase is in itself a use. Here we're not dealing with a use that is not permitted in the zone. Communications in, I believe, subsection B of 5.10-060 expressly permits communications in this zone. In addition, with this allowable use of communications, the interpretation is conflicted in terms of the height. Height is typically a development standard. With this case, a conditional use permit deals with the uses, a variance deals with a standard, or to be more specific, to vary from a set standard under certain conditions and qualifications. Second, it goes to the language of the Newman Municipal Code. This is on the staff report. This is item number 2, where the code specifies, quote, the absolute height of any structure with or without a conditional use permit is 75 feet. This, to me, speaks specifically to the conditional use permit. It doesn't speak to an absolute restriction under any circumstances to exceed the height, or not to exceed the height. which going with the interpretation that a conditional use permit and a variance are two separate items, here we should be allowed to proceed with our variance application. This is further, further supported by the fact that a conditional use permit and a variance have two separate standards. In order to show a variance, as Mr. Helen has stated, you need to show practical, specified under your code in the section dealing with variances, you have to show practical difficulty or hardship. This standard is not present in the section showing proof for a conditional use permit. This is also recognized by California's case law, which distinguishes conditional use permits and variances because of this different standard. And so as I said, I do agree that the ordinance itself limits the height with conditional use permit to 75 feet. However, to get a conditional use permit, we do not need to show the same standards that we would to get this variance. It's a different threshold. And I'd like to answer any questions that you may have.
Did you initially apply for a conditional use permit?
Yes, we did.
And then you were denied the conditional use permit?
No, we were not denied through discussions with Mr. Holland.
You couldn't go any higher than 75 feet with the conditional use permit?
Yes, our application is for 110, and
Right.
then it was made, it was brought to our attention the 75-foot height limit, and that was when we applied for the variance to increase the height from 75 feet to 110 as in our originally submitted use permit application. So.
Further questions?
I guess I don't have any further questions.
Okay.
I'm going to support both the Planning Commission and staff, and I'll tell you a couple of things. We have a water tower here in town that has a number of agreements with a couple of wireless companies. I believe, I don't know if it's this particular company that represents Verizon Wires, but I know that some representation from Verizon Wireless came before us before.
Was this back in February?
I can't recall when it was
Earlier,
exactly, but we had a non-negotiable contract that was put before us. My suggestion would be, because that's our highest site in the city of Newman. I don't know how tall it is exactly. Does anyone know? It may be higher than the 120 feet that you're requesting.
Well, it was satisfactory form before, Kim.
What's that?
It was satisfactorily high before.
Yeah, it was. But we
was.
were left with nothing to negotiate. It was a kind of a binding agreement that came before us. Because this isn't going to go.
Yeah. And actually I have Kevin Brennan with me who was part of that, if you have questions for him.
Well, I was just going to, my suggestion was going to be in terms of that being our highest point in the city, that may be something that you may want to consider, because at that time I think something was brought to us in a contract form was binding and non-negotiable from the city, and we just couldn't, set that
Your
back.
question would be if there still would be interested in that site if they're not allowed to proceed higher than 75 feet. That would probably be your question.
I know that my vote is not going to allow them to proceed any higher. I'm going to stick with the ordinance that we have here. But that would be something that he might want to seek as a negotiating aspect.
I can address your question, Mr. Parker. My name is Kevin Brennan. I work with Aaron at Complete Wireless. I was here at before you and the council in February, and just to refresh your memory, the city-owned water tank is 119 feet. We were proposing to mount antennas on the legs just below the catwalk, which would have given us sufficient height. We did work with Mr. French and Mr. Hallinan on a contract and presented it before the council. There was the length of time that Verizon needed to have invested in the site, potentially at 20 years, was too long for you to be comfortable with. And so that was the crux of the reason for the contract to be denied.
Yeah, it was an evergreen contract, I think renewed every 5 years.
It was an initial term of 5 years with 3 renewable 5-year terms.
That is correct.
And unfortunately, Verizon, in their business model, just could not accept a potential contract for less than 20 years for payback on a site after that investment.
I think the feeling at that time was that 20 years would probably work, but we just didn't want to be held to that 20 years. We didn't.
Correct. There was no opportunity in the contract to terminate the contract, and that is correct. That was the issue.
Thank you. If there's no more questions then, thank you. Could we have some, no other direction if there's no other questions or comments?
Well, I move that we uphold the Planning Commission and Planning Director's interpretation of the Newman Municipal Code.
Do we have a
Second that
second?
motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item B, introduce an ordinance number 2005, next to number, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newman authorizing an amendment to the contract between the City Council of the City of Newman and the Board of Administration of the California Public Employees Retirement System.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Attached to the staff report is this contract language that came back to us from CalPERS. This is the ordinance portion of the step necessary to put into effect the 2.7 and 55 pension plan for the miscellaneous members that was negotiated with the union and applies to all non-public safety employees. This has not been noticed yet in the paper, so we will have to notice it before we actually go into it in any detail. So I would rather, at the second reading, hold off for. I mean, we could talk about it, but we're going to talk about it again, I guess.
Well, should we just continue it then? It hasn't been noticed for public hearing?
It wasn't before this, yes, but I understand from the city attorney we could put it in public notice in before the first read or the second reading. So my thinking is that the public will, if any, turn up at the second reading, which is the next council meeting. So we could possibly discuss it more then. Well, we do have to introduce it, yes. Thank you, Judy.
So we can just go ahead and introduce it.
Was that the introduction?
That was it.
That was it? Okay.
Well, I assume you all are very familiar with what this is, and that's why I didn't go into great detail. But if you want to know the terms of the contract that we have with PERS for miscellaneous, it's attached in its entirety to the staff report.
Was that a motion?
Well, I think the way I understood it, they just need to introduce it.
Was that an introduction?
We need the motion to introduce it.
Yeah.
I make the motion, we introduce it.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. I was trying to get you to get away from having to read that whole thing.
Thank you.
Item C, report on deficit in Fund 17, state parks, state grants, Lions Park.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At a previous council meeting, the council asked me to explain the deficit in Fund 17, and I promised to do so. And what we have is a deficit of $105,000, which is equal to the project cost for Lions Park. And I included the staff report from March 23rd, 2004, which shows that the project cost would be $105,000, that we had been granted, I believe, $2,000 per capita park grant for $58,000. As the staff report says, the balance of the funds for this project were going to be made up from the 2002 parks grant, which is a entitlement grant, which we will be given to up to $220,000, provided we submit eligible projects. Now, I've talked to them, and they said that the balance of this park costs, which have been expended and are shown in Fund 17, would be eligible for the remainder, would be eligible out of the $220,000. On the other hand, we have park impact fees, which also could be used to fill this deficit. So the staff and I are going to bring forward to you a list. I think you've already seen this list, but we're going to start doing some projects off the list you were shown for how to expend the $220,000, which we have until 2011 to expend. So I guess the long and short of it is this fund deficit will be filled. First of all, the fund deficit was entirely caused by the Lions Park project, which was the plan as shown in on March 23rd staff report, and that we will raise the deficit either by park impact fees, of which we have over $1 million on account, or we could use funds from this grant. So we will be bringing that forward to you, I think, in a combined package, probably with the first project of this 2002 park grant fund proposal. We will be also making a recommendation for closing this deficit. I'll take any questions now, if you have any.
John, I know you talked about them having a site visit. They haven't done that yet.
No, I have not. They told me they would be here this month, so and they told me that they're not late. They just like to wait until they have enough of them in the area to warrant the trip down from Sacramento. So I will keep on them because we will not see a check until they have seen it. And they have written okay on all of our paperwork, so we don't owe them any more information. They just need to come down here.
Questions? Comments? Okay, I guess I'll make one comment since Charles isn't here. I know he's the one that really wanted to get this done, and he wanted to report, and it disturbs me that he isn't here this evening.
I will have to apologize. When you asked me if I knew where he was, I blanked out, but it came to me that he walked up to me at the League of California Cities on, I believe it was Thursday, and told me to tell you that he would not be here, to apologize to the council and the city that he would be unable to make this meeting. And in the furor of that exchange and time elapsed since, I totally forgot about it. So I apologize for keeping you in the dark.
Okay, so he already knew then he wasn't going to be here.
And I did too, and it just went over my head.
Okay. Moving on. Items from the city manager and staff.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. I have a couple items. We met with Bert Bertolotti, as I told you in an email last week. He came to town to talk about garbage collection, and we talked about the spring cleanups going on and how one out-of-city resident had asked if she could participate. And he said, well, you know, my rates, that is, Bertolotti disposal rates, are based on certain participation by the city residents, and it covers the cost of these cleanups. So he said if we're going to open the door to anybody outside the city, he would have to come back with a rate reconsideration, because that's. And I know the contract says he will provide these cleanups, and I did not check the contract that said whether or not we were supposed to govern who comes to them, but it does specifically say he will provide 2 cleanups a year to city residents. So I'm sure he probably has a pretty good contractual language to stand on when he says he can't afford under that contract to support anybody from outside the city limits. So I just want to let you know about that.
How many years left on that contract, John? Do you remember? Or?
Gosh, I believe it's 5, but I cannot be absolutely certain.
Let us know, just for future reference.
John, before you go on, I think the comment was made that it wasn't going to be open to all residents of the rural community, the ones that he does business with. Was that expressed to him that way?
Well, we actually we looked at the sphere map, and I didn't ask him if he served this area, but he basically said he wouldn't serve anybody outside the city limits without having to incur additional costs, because it isn't the manpower at the cleanup or the containers. It's the disposal site. It's disposal fees at the landfill, then the transportation costs. So I could revisit the conversation with him and ask him specifically that.
Yes. Whether the people in the city of Newman are paying a different rate than the residents outside that are doing business with it. Follow what I mean? You might have a Bertolotti container, but you're out in the country with it. So you're still doing business with it. Is that rate the same as what we're paying in the city?
I don't know.
If it is, they should have the same entitlement that we have. Not that I'm promoting things for out of city.
Well, she also brought up, why is there a Crow's Landing cleanup that you can't go to, and why isn't there a South County cleanup? And I asked Public Works Director, and he said that he would look into that. the county public works director.
You know, if we were more proactive instead of reactive, then maybe the county board of supervisors wouldn't have to spend over $400,000 a year policing county roads to pick that garbage up. If the people had a chance someplace to take it and get rid of it.
I think it's the honest,
Pay me later, Jim.
the honest people that have the garbage service. I don't think they're the ones that are dumping it.
Well, probably not, but
Addressing the facilities of the county, I can tell you why we have programmed cleanup where we got the money, it's out of redevelopment money.
That's why it's limited to that area.
That's why it's specific to that area. And it was, planning department who would have known that,
Oh.
let me ask you this then, Jim, while you're addressing it, would that be available to encompass the entire rural west side area rather than just Crow's Landing?
Well, I don't know how we would come up with the money for it, because the rural area is not in the redevelopment area. Crow's Landing, all of Crow's Landing is in redevelopment. And we use, some of that redevelopment money we use for cleanup occasionally.
Let me ask you a further question. Do you think you would save a substantial amount of that $400,000 a year by having a county-wide cleanup from time to time, giving these people a chance to bring that and dump it at one time rather than you having to send manpower out to clean it up off the roads?
Oh, I think that that's probably possible. We thought about having a free dump day at the landfill, every few months. We haven't decided what to do there yet. But that's one of the things that's being considered. Next week we'll be addressing penalties, for illegal dumping, but a free dump day is one of the things we are considering.
Seems like I remember in the past, I think they used to do that. Free dump days and free amnesty tire days too. Some years back at the dump, I remember.
I'm not sure that's tires. Free dump day, I think, might make some sense considering the $400,000 to spend on picking up garbage. And that doesn't include, farmers like myself who pick up quite a bit through the year and dispose of it on our own dime.
You know what, I don't think it would make that much difference. I think people would still dump, because I'll give you an example. I rode the buses in San Jose to work for 18 years. People could not be bothered to walk 6 feet to the disposal to get rid of their garbage. They were either sitting on the bus stop, and I think people would still be dumping. Even if you did have you might not have as much, but I still think you have quite a bit. Even just know looking at human nature, the way people do that.
I think you're probably right. Some people just don't care, huh? John, do you have anything else?
Yes, another topic that came up on the cleanups. Bert suggested that we consider cleanups by appointment year-round. He's done it in series in other communities. It saves him a lot of time. Instead of having one cleanup day where people have to transport their items to a certain location, they would have up to 3 appointments a year. They would call his office. He would keep track of it. He would send people to their home and take whatever would otherwise be eligible at the drop-off from them at their residence. It would save people who don't have trucks. It would be 3 a year. He would track who's using it and who hasn't. And he says that he could do it and save money. It wouldn't cost us any more. Sounds like a good idea to me.
Yeah.
You know, with all this refuge talk, I gotta make one comment in terms of with Bert and their services. You know, at one point, we as a city were not charged because of a surcharge or a surcharge amount. That's how we got our recyclable program. And I thought I'd just make mention of how the city of Newman has dealt with our current refuge under the contract, how it's worked out really well with us. Because that was one of the questions that was posed at one point about recycling. We got the big black recycling bins at no added cost to our refuge contract. So, you know, we've benefited to a certain extent, and I think that given this last program of the appointment, that sounds really great. Because if they'll keep track, then a person could curbside this stuff
which would make it much simpler throughout the year, 3 times throughout the year, as you were saying?
That's right, and one thing we have to watch out for is if they put something out there that wouldn't be allowed, like a
Hazardous
or a
battery.
refrigeration unit has Freon in it. We might have a code enforcement problem getting them to remove it. That recycling program was started with a grant. He reminded me of that, and he's moving to blue containers in the new houses now. But he doesn't have, at his own expense, but he's not going back and taking the other ones until they wear out. So we'll have new ones will be blue in a very short while.
Yeah.
We talk about recycling. For our size of our city, we're one of the highest per capita recyclers in the county, because I'm on the local task force representing Newman for that, and we're very high up there. We just, when you figure out the per capita and the people, we blow Modesto out of the water big time. So for a small city, we're doing our part.
John, a question on recycling. It was asked of me by several people, the possibility of having recycling pickup every week. And I don't know if there's any profits that they enjoy from doing this recycling, but I know if we're really trying to encourage recycling, at some point in time, once a week pickup is not something that, not possible. It should be possible sometime.
I'll look into that. I know that there were people in the garbage industry will tell you that recycling does not pay for itself.
It does not.
There is some revenue, but it's an up and down thing. Right now it's pretty low, so it does subsidize to a degree. But I'm sure it'll be additional cost if it's, well, I can't say that, but I would think we'd have to look at that. I will talk to them about that.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with communities where they say, you put it out, we'll pick it up either week, because we have to go by anyway. And it figures to be about the same. Not everybody will put it out every week. Probably the minority will put it out every week. Most people put it out every 2 weeks. They don't have any more of an opportunity, but we'll look into that. Lastly, the fiber optic that's coming down into this building for the public education and government channel that Comcast is going to be providing for us. They asked permission to not underground it at this time because of the Rule 20A money that PG&E is going to underground all the alleyway in 07. They didn't want to dig up the street twice. So I gave them permission to overhead it from the poles in the alley down into this building so that we can have a higher speed and better quality broadcasts of our council meetings and other things. So that's going to be coming along soon. Also, Public Works is not represented here tonight because Ernie's in a seminar, American Water Works seminar, and Doug is on medical leave, so they both want to let you know that they would be here, but they just can't. So that's all I have to say. I think my staff are eager to speak. Eager?
I'm always eager to talk about the general plan. The general plan steering committee did go on a tour, which was a scheduled tour. They did that all day on Tuesday, October 4th. They all took time off their schedule. It was well attended. 7 out of the 9 were able to attend. Unfortunately, the other 2 had scheduling conflicts and were not able to attend. We did put a copy of the tour guide on our website if anybody wants to see the projects that the tour committee went to. They went and saw projects in downtown Pleasanton, Danville, 2 projects in Davis. There was Aggie Village, which Councilman Parker had alluded to, and then the project that Committee Member Navoa was speaking about is called Village Homes. Village Homes is an internationally acclaimed project. It's a small lot project with open paseos, and it's not really a manicured landscape. It's more of an organic landscaping. You just kind of see a bunch of different things over, and what they did was they put an edible landscaping out there, meaning all fruit trees. They didn't plant on every lot. They didn't use storm drainage pipes. They just used swales. So all the swales go right next to the paseos and drain that way. So while other parts of Davis are flooding, they seem to stay dry. It's a natural groundwater recharge system as well. Lots of open space over there. We saw a lady who had been living there for over 30 years picking walnuts, part of the edible landscaping on there. So, following Davis, we went back to Sassoon City. Saw a project there, and then last we went to a waterfront project in Hercules. Now, each project, while it was unique to its own setting, we were able to take elements of each project, and they would be adaptable to the community of Newman, and whether it be our downtown or whether it be future residential projects. The last project we saw was called Red Bridge in Tracy, and Red Bridge is a really nice project because there's no curb cuts. It's all alley access and how they dealt with the alleys and how they make sure that they don't look like alleys. They're more of a lane type structure, and they're landscaped. But there's a homeowners association involved with that as well. So again, if anybody wants to see that tour guidebook, that is on www.cityofnewman.com. Just click on the general plan link and then hit steering committee, and it'll be on there. So the meeting that is scheduled for a week from today has been canceled to allow staff future time to conclude what is phase 1 of this general plan update. Phase 1 is really the project where we've been dealing with the land use map and the land use uses on that map and the future land uses of the community. We'll wrap that up at our November 15th meeting with the preferred alternative that the General Plan Steering Committee has given direction to. With that, there will also be a slideshow of the tour that we went on, and then lastly will be the introduction into phase 2 of this project, which is really going to be policy review and refinement. So we'll look at all the existing policies that are in our general plan and determine which ones are appropriate, which ones need to be eliminated, which ones need to be refined. And that's really the key element I think we'll pay a special close attention to, because that's where your teeth are in your document to get future developments to adhere to the project descriptions that, everyone sees pretty pictures of what projects need to be, but enforcing them is another thing, and that's where we're really going to fine tune to make sure the teeth are in there. So when the council comes back and says, we want this, it's in our general plan, then we have a leg to stand on if it ever had to go to future legal discourse. So with that, I can answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Handouts?
Yeah, there's a handout. Let me ask afterwards.
Thanks, Mike.
What I've given you is it's a kind of an advanced release that we're looking at on a case that we've been working on for a little over 2 months. Just kind of let you know what we're looking at is that we had a theft of milk, and we're not talking about a carton of milk. We're talking about 2,000 to 3,000 gallons of milk on a daily basis. Our victim in this case was F&A Cheese. This was occurring on a daily basis. What was happening was we had a dairy owner and a milk transport driver that were working together to defraud F&A Cheese of milk on this daily basis. We're also looking, both of these individuals have been arrested. We are now trying to find where their proceeds have gone, and I know more about milk than I ever wanted to know about. As you can see, these individuals are being held to answer. One's coming up on an court appearance on November 14th, and the dairy owner is scheduled for an arraignment on October 21st. He is currently out on bail. We are trying to establish through further investigation where the proceeds of all this funding occurred and where the money has gone to. We have made seizures on some of the not real property, but some other property that they have. We have some vehicles that have been purchased through these ill-gotten funds. With that, I'll kind of take any kind of questions. We've been working with the DA's office, the Ag Crime Task Force of both Merced County, Stanislaus County, and other various agricultural commissions and such on a state level. We're not really versed in milk theft. We are now. With that, I'll take any kind of questions you may have regarding this.
Have you found any more revenue other than what you first found?
We're still under investigation on possibly another dairy that may be involved.
a lot of milk.
It's a lot of milk. We're talking about 2,000 to 3,000 gallons on a daily basis. It's about half of one of those tankers, half a load of one of the dual tanks that they carry.
Well, it wasn't really a theft. They were just claiming that the milk was there, and it really wasn't. Technically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. Yeah, the milk production for that dairy has gone about half.
Steal the milk. It's just they were getting paid for the milk that wasn't there.
That's correct.
That's a lot, though.
Yep.
That's a lot, especially on a daily basis. We're talking, this has been going on, we figured at this point it's begun in October of 2004, so it's been, you're talking on a daily basis, that's a lot of milk. This is raw milk, too. Well, we're talking in excess of about $1 million of loss, so.
Now you know what it means when they say got milk.
You had to say it.
They got trouble now.
Now it's called
Oh, boy.
It's called no milk.
I'll have to remember that. I'm sure we're going to take a few hits on this one as far as the jokes.
Well, that's a good job.
Our detective did an excellent job. His name's Chuck Hale. He's been before you before. He's been on with us for about 3 years. But he did an excellent job with us. He just took it by the horns. And it was funny, we had the staff come over here, and when he said they had a loss of milk, we were thinking cartons. So.
Are these people related?
No, they are not.
But when you think about something that becomes a seven-figure mark like that, so substantial in a year's time, that is how consumers start feeling the impact of cost, because you can maybe duplicate this where it's going on somewhere else in the valley, where somebody's defrauding, a big dairy like that, where it's hard to keep account. So that's a good job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Since there's no more staff here, I guess that's it for staff reports. Items from the city council members. Mike?
Yeah, if you haven't been out to the industrial park to see the construction out there, take a ride. It's going along. It looks fabulous. Very nice. And one question for staff. What happened with the bus stop that was in front of the Corchard home?
That's a good question. I was, Brad Christian was going to get back to me, and I was out of town last week and never thought about that. I have to ask him.
I can actually answer that question.
You got back
to
to
Brad today at a meeting. They've been behind on moving that stop, but it's on the schedule to come and move it, so he hopes in the next couple of weeks it's going to get moved.
Will
like
it be
8 feet to the east. They're going to move it.
8 feet to the east. That's all they're going to move it? Why even bother moving it?
Because they're moving it off the right of way that's in front of the property owners. That's all she wants.
That satisfies him?
Yep. They've been monitoring people at that stop, and he said today averaging 10 people a month getting on or off at that stop. So
Which stop is that?
on Merced and S Street.
Oh.
As long as they're happy. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Bob?
Nope, just to mention, attended the League of Cities meeting in San Francisco with some of my colleagues, and as always, there's a lot of good information provided at these sessions. Sometimes you go to a session, it's not what you expected, but there is a lot of good information, and it's a good time to talk to other towns of similar size as Newman and get some ideas as far as what's going on in their cities. But I thought it'd be very worthwhile. That's all I have.
One thing I learned is how to step over the people sleeping in their cardboards early in the morning walking down the street. But that's another issue.
Yeah.
Tim?
I have nothing this evening.
And I had nothing either. With that, we will adjourn the closed session. Conference with labor negotiator, operating engineers looking number 3, police and miscellaneous, GC 54957.6. Thank you.